Did he had a troubled childhood? Which surroundings was he in? Which people was he involved with? Did any of these factors have an influence on this troubled boy? By looking deeper into what his life was before the Criminal Act, we have talked to his mother, Rebecca McKnight, and read our different letters and articles. So first we asked his mom, Rebecca McKnight, about his childhood. And Jose, according to his mom, tells us that he was in school, he had a lot of friends, he was very likable. As we understood, he have always been very outspoken and liked to be surrounded with people. When Jose was little, his parents did not have the best relationship. Jose explains the situation in a letter he wrote that growing up in Elkhart was hard, mainly because his father was barely there. When Jose, he only had his mom and both of his grandmothers. Jose also mentioned Angie Mabo, which was a friend of the family, who was always there for him no matter what. Jose also explains the horrific times when he had to watch his mom endure domestic violence abuse for many years. He states, "I really believe that my mother sustained from leaving the household due to the fact of me still being young and needing my father in my life. She's always wanted the best for me, and living with both my parents, no matter what circumstances, was considered the best. But my father leaving at any time was pretty much inevitable." When Jose got older and started in elementary school, his mom and father got a divorce, and being a single mom with a son who has many bad memories from his childhood could be difficult. Starting school could be a new beginning for Jose. However, first year of school, he already felt different from the others. He did not, for example, have the same clothes as the other kids. And since his mom, Rebecca, had a full-time job where she did not earn too much, it was hard to give Jose what he wanted. He states, "I honestly thought back then I was separated from everyone else because of money." What he did not know was that everyone wanted what he had. Therefore, he began to distance himself and eventually turned to the streets. He then began to surround himself with the wrong people. But when his mom finally got a better position at her job, everything began to fall into place. It was too late for. Things with Jose has gone too far. He was allowing himself to be dragged deeper into the streets. Yeah, he states, "I was so deep into following negative people in those streets that it was too late to turn around. I even tried to change myself, enrolled and paid for drug addiction classes, anger management classes, and even counseling. But I was so stuck into following the wrong crowd, I would always take 2 steps forward and get knocked 3 steps backwards." Since Jose could not change his behavior, he and his other 4 friends decided to allow themselves only by doing a small burglary, which dramatically changed the murder scene from their worst nightmare.
We are now going to look a little deeper into what happened to Jose after the attempted burglary. Jose Quiroz was arrested October 4th, 2012, and his court date was November 16th. Between these 2 days, the plea deal was offered to him, and he had to make a decision. Between these 2 days, there are 44 days, which means that Jose was given 44 days to make the most important decision of his life. And as if this decision wasn't hard enough by itself, Jose was in addition coming down from being high on illegal drugs, which he said that he was on during the attempted burglary. He was mourning the death of one of his closest friends. He was getting used to his new living conditions because he and the other boys had already been transferred to adult jail. And he was dealing with the separation from his mom and his support network and all his friends and family. In addition to all of this, his advocate was a public defender who he hardly knew. And this defender was telling him that he could be facing decades or even a century in prison if he didn't accept the deal. So Jose decided to take the plea deal, but in court in December he tried to revoke this plea. Judge Shoemaker denied this request and sentenced Jose to 45 years in prison with 10 years of probation afterwards. Because the state of Indiana has this one-for-one deal where if you have one good day with good behavior, you get 1 day off your sentence. Jose can get out of prison after 22.5 years. We just made a little comparison. At the age of 16, the state of Indiana will not let you vote. The state of Indiana will not let you drink alcohol. There are several limitations placed upon 16-year-olds because the government feels that they are not mature enough to take on the responsibilities of these decisions. Yet Jose was 16 years old and he had to navigate through the difficult Indiana judicial system and make a decision that would change the rest of his life. Media has, while reporting on the Elkhart 4, focused a lot on the 3 other boys, on Blake and Levi and Anthony, while little has been written about Jose. And the main reason for this is the fact that Jose has a set sentence and that he accepted the plea deal. Because when he accepted the plea deal, he also gave away several of his constitutional rights, which means that he cannot appeal this conviction for felony murder. Right now, he's sentencing in Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, and he is waiting for something called a post-conviction relief. The PCR is sort of like an appeal. It works kind of the same way, but it's based more on if the court did something wrong. And it's a hearing where he can appeal the criminal convictions, which may lead to a release or a new trial or a modification of the sentence. His hearing is in February 2015, and he will come before the same judge who sentenced him the first time.
Yeah. So we're now talking about the facts as concerning this case. We can see that it's not all just about like laws and sentences. It is hard to fit this case in a category and to find what the boys really should be charged with. America is divided, and I'm showing a huge interest in this case and what will happen to the boys. There are several questions that need to be answered, and we are now going to talk about the main two sides in this debate.
An obvious place to start with a debate like this is with the question, the boys broke the law, why all the fuss?
Yes, the boys broke the law, and yes, they should be punished for it. No question asked about that. They did not commit a murder. If the charge had been a burglary or a home invasion or even an involuntary manslaughter, this case would be completely different. But the boys did not enter the house with the intent of murdering the house owner or their friend. But that is what they're being charged for. The law is written also very vaguely. Some places it states that the requirement for felony murder is if a killing occurs during the commission of a felony, it is a felony murder. And in some other places it states if a person kills during the commission of a felony, it is a felony murder. These two ways of formulating a sentence make a big difference for these boys.
So you keep blaming everybody. You keep saying it's the law's fault, or it's the prosecutor's fault, or it's the homeowner's fault, but we have to look at who's really to blame here. If the boys didn't enter that house that day, Dan Saul Johnson would still be alive today. And if you look at it that way, Dan Saul's death is on their shoulders. And at this point, the law is clear. Someone died during the commission of a felony, and someone should be charged with felony murder. I believe in the best phrase, do the crime, do the time, don't you?
So this is one of the best phrases that sounds great, but ignores the complexity of criminal justice. If do the crime, do the time effectively reduced crime in the USA, would be then the USA would be the safest country in the world. Instead, we see the opposite happening, and with the US having more prisoners than many other countries. For these boys, our more appropriate solution would be to find a program that would help the boys and to a better path as an alternative to decades in prison, that it would also effectively reduce the chance of re-offending. Locking these boys up for crime they did not commit and never dreamed of doing is not productive. There is also another wonderful best phrase: let the punishment fit the crime. In this case, the punishment does not fit the crime.
You say the boys never dreamed about committing a crime like this, meaning murder. But how do you know that? The boys never spoke in court. They never defended themselves or told their side of the story. There are also obvious signs that someone was home. Mr. Scott's car was parked outside his house, and right inside the door, his keys and his wallet were sitting. These should have been obvious signs that the boys chose to oversee.
Chose to oversee? As the boys said to Dr. Phil, the stress and adrenaline made them overwhelmed them, and led them to miss signs like these. Also, teenage boys do not have the same patterns as an adult person. A teenager will not always bring their wallet whenever they go outside, and sometimes they walk instead of driving. To them, the knocking on the door was a clear sign that no one was home. And there we have another part of this issue. Throughout this debate, we have referred the boys, the offenders, as boys, which is exactly what they are. They are teenagers that do not have fully developed brains. That should also be a factor that should be taken into account when sentencing them.
Yes, to some extent, I agree with you on that point. Even though I still believe that felony murder is the right charge, we know that the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. These boys were between the ages of 16 and 18, and that should have been taken into account during the trial. So I do believe that the sentence of 55 years is a very harsh punishment.
So we see there's a lot of ways looking in at this case, and what will finally happen with the boys is still unknown. The opinions we express in this debate is not our own, but one of the two major sides of this debate. All we know that the final word is not been said in this case, and we can only hope that the boys will not spend their majority of their lives behind bars.